Hello everyone, Pentooth here today in a video in which I'm gonna talk a lot. And we are gonna talk about a specific subject that I had in mind this morning while playing a bit my oldest premiums, and it's the premium downgrade. And what do I mean by that? I don't mean by that Wargaming is introducing new premiums that are bad, because it's clearly the opposite when you see what kind of tanks we have now with the Smasher, for example, or Scorpion G or WZ-121 GFT, etc. But what I want to talk about here is how the oldest premium tanks in the game are reacting to the current meta in the game. Because the game evolved a lot, like a lot. And new premiums are extremely more versatile, even if they are supposed to play a specific game style, for example Tank Destroyer or Heavy or anything like that. They can still pretty much do everything. I remember in the good old days, I don't know if it's the right thing to say it's the good old days, because I still love the game now, and I think I enjoy it more now because it evolves, simply. But in the good old days, it was easier for you to be good with these premiums. Why? Because most of the time golds were not allowed to be bought for credits, for example. So when we take the example of the KV5, which was the first premium ever introduced in World of Tank Blitz, if I remember correctly, this tank was amazing because without gold, even if it has a lot of weak spots, it was extremely hard for you to penetrate it with the regular shells. And after the game evolved, and now that everybody is using premium shells and everybody at tier 8 has more than 220mm of penetration, your KV5 is becoming useless. And that's the same thing for the SU-12244. I remember in the good old days with this tank, you could probably bounce pretty much everything at tier 6, pretty much everything at tier 8, if you knew how to angle, of course. Today, it's extremely hard, because with the constant buff of tier 7s that occurred in the 6.7 update, or even all the buffs that the game went through during these years, these tanks are forced to become ineffective on the battlefield. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, okay, you spent... The only thing that irritates me is the fact that you spend money on these tanks. And as you spend money on these tanks, you expect them to act always great. But no, guys, that's not how it works. When you buy a premium tank, it's like a car. When you buy your car, it's brand new, you're extremely happy, and it's running crazy, it's good. But wait 10 years, 5 years, even 3 years, and you're gonna have really better cars on the market. And that's the exact same logic in this game. Because how does it work? Let's talk about the mechanism. That's gonna be simple. When a new premium tank is released, with the current meta in the game, that will of course be subject to a lot of changes, but in the actual state of the game, the tank you have is great. You buy your tank, you know it's best suitable for this game because developers are working on tanks, especially premiums, that will make you want to buy it. And what is the best marketing technique to make you buy a tank? To make it versatile, or at least to make it competitive against other tanks. But it's taking informations only on the update the tank is released. I don't think Wargaming is planning on 10, 20 updates how the tank is gonna react, because Wargaming doesn't know what they're gonna implement in the next 20 updates. And that's exactly why tanks are meant to be overshadowed by others. That's how it is. When a warrior falls, a new one rise. And that's exactly the logic we're into. So, let's take the example of the KV5 replay you're watching here. By the way, extremely good replay sent by Mong, which is a French player, and I love the replay. I'm gonna talk about the replay right now, and I'm gonna come back to the main subject after. But he played it extremely well, extremely careful, and that's the world record, guys. The KV5 world record is right here, and it's from the 6.7 update. And just look, it's gonna be incredible. Now, let's go back to the subject. After a while, told you the game is gonna evolve and your tank is not gonna evolve with it. Because the only possibility for Wargaming to make a premium tank evolve with the current state of the game is buffing it. And usually when they release a tank, they don't touch it anymore, especially when it's a premium tank, because that's their policy. I know they allow themselves to buff or nerf collectibles, but not premiums. And that's why the KV-5 didn't got touched. It got touched on the buff for a new gun with better penetration. But let's face it, the problem with the KV-5 is not the penetration. The problem is the number of weak spots you had. Because in the previous state of the game, people will not penetrate you as easily as it is nowadays. And that's logic. You can't really blame the developers for that. It's logic. These tanks are meant to die. Because in the good old days, if you watch at how many KV-5s there were in the game, you would have been like, wow, it's incredible, the KV-5 is OP. Today, I see one KV-5 every 100 battles in the game. Honestly, I'm not even lying. Why? Because the tank is not effective anymore. It had the golden age. The golden age of the KV-5 is dead. It's over. And now it's time for other premiums to shine. And that's this exact same thing for the i6. That's the same thing for the SU-122-44. There are still tanks that are performing quite well, for example the T-34, but most of the older premiums are dead. But is it gonna stay like this? That's the question you might ask. I don't think it should stay like this. I mean, Wargaming could buff them. I'm against it. I'm against buffing older premiums because I don't want all the tanks implemented to be all versatile, because if we do that, the game is not gonna be the same. It's not gonna have the same taste. As I'm in favor of a game where each tank has a specific role. I don't want a game where all tanks are versatile. We have the example with the Sheridan, and it's only annoying. And Wargaming is already planning on nerfing them, by the way. Therefore, maybe we're gonna see a Sheridan balanced and not completely broken. But just imagine if Wargaming decided for the 6.8 or 6.9 update to increase the armor on the KV-5. I mean, maybe it's not gonna do a big difference for you, but imagine they buff it to death. I mean, they buff it too much, you can't penetrate it anymore. Of course it's gonna be broken. That's why we want the KV-5 to stay like this. We want all these tanks not to really evolve. We just need to accept the fact that these tanks are not suitable anymore for the game. I mean, they can still be effective, don't mind me. They can still be effective if you have a lot of skill and you know how to play them. But most of the time, let's face it, if you have a KV-5 and you're against, let's say, an E75TS, you would rather play the E75TS than the KV-5. And that's logic, because the E75TS is better. It's better, that's all I have to say. It's better, it's more suitable for the current meta of the game than the KV-5. And what are you gonna do about this? Nothing, because there is nothing to do apart accepting the fate of old premiums. Everybody has to die, even tanks. And that's the perfect example. But in one other hand, I want to show you this replay that Monk sent me, because even if these tanks, I consider them to be dead in the game, they can still be extremely effective. You need to have a lot of luck, because of course when you do a world record game, it's all about skill and also luck. You have to get both. But if you watched the replay closely, when you see the Smasher spamming full gold at the KV-5, you see that there is something wrong, because the KV-5 now is butter to these tanks, because the Smasher with gold have 250mm of armor, of penetration, sorry. And therefore, what are you supposed to do against a tier 7 with 250mm of penetration with your KV-5? Nothing. Just nothing. I mean, you can try to side scrap, but most of the time he's gonna still penetrate you in the turret, etc. Because in the good old days, these tanks didn't have that much penetration. That's how it is. We need to accept the fact that the game is changing about premiums, and I'm glad. Honestly, I'm in favor of that. I don't care about my premiums dying, because that's the full cycle of the life. Tell me in the comments, what do you think about this? Don't forget that you're not here to be better, but to be the best. Pantouf, over.